Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Slim Nation One-on-Ones. And of course, I'm Slim Overton. And with the Slim Nation, my goal is to share information on people on our broadcast. And by the way, we're going to be live on my Facebook pages, on our YouTube channel, and of course, we're going to be live also on the Mary Red Nelson Panther Nation alumni show because we have a Panther here. We have a fellow Panther here. That's so I figured let's go live on that show as well. Anytime we have a Panther, we're gonna showcase them. And no, no
Absolutely.
no offense to you, Belika. Belika.
Oh, that's okay. That's
Am
okay.
I
Well, the
pronouncing
years
that right?
can, yes,
Belika.
that's correct.
Okay. All right. Just want
Now,
to make sure. Yeah.
are you talking about the
Yeah.
football team?
Yes.
Hey, I'm from
Look.
South Carolina, so yeah, that's a given.
Oh yeah, yeah. We when I was there in the '70s, they did a heavy recruiting of football players. I'm telling you,
Okay.
those guys were no joke. So South Carolina is the thing. The only problem I had was some of the South Carolinians, the ones that were from Charleston. Uh, I thought they were from the islands because that
Oh yeah,
dialect. And
yeah.
it's a great history. It's a great history behind why they talk like that. But we used to joke them, but the history is full because that's where one of those ships landed, and that's why they talk like that. They call it geeky, but
Yes. Yeah.
uh,
Ichi.
you have to
Oh
get used
yeah.
to it. Yeah. So, but anyway, let's get started. But before we get started, before I introduce my guest, I want to say that I am a heart transplant recipient. So, I kind of understand the physical and psychological experiences that someone goes through when they get a diagnosis that is serious, that could be life changing.
Yeah.
So I can remember when the doctor told me, you'll be fine. You just need a new heart. And he said it so casually. I said, wait a minute, are you talking about pulling teeth or what? I mean, a new heart? And
Yeah.
but that started my journey there, and that's why today we have two ladies on here, and we have one who's returning. You remember Shelley D. Dance, and if you missed that interview, go to my YouTube channel, the Slim Nation One-on-Ones, and you can see that interview where we talked about her journey to her professionalism and what she's doing today. And we also have Veleka
Mhm.
Sawyer.
That's right.
And both of these ladies are realtors, so I kind of feel a kinship with them because I used to be a realtor back in another life. So for about 5 years, I wasn't there long, but I was there long enough to experience what it is and what it's like to be a professional. And I say professional because that's what realtor means for those people that want to just call us real estate agents. We're a little bit
Right.
more than that. We're realtors, we're professionals, and that's what that
Yes.
realtor
Very different.
designation means. But anyway,
Hmm.
let's get to but first. We want to talk about your experiences and things you've been to, and I really appreciate you both coming on, willing to talk about it. I know what I've been through is therapeutic for me to talk about it, and it also helps other people. You had countless people to contact me while I was talking about what I went through, how it gave them the you know the nerve to talk about what they were doing through their challenges, through their health challenges. And some people, men especially, it made them say, "Let me go see my doctor. Let me check these things out." So I appreciate you ladies coming on and talking about what you want to talk about today, and especially the psychological uh, effects that something, a diagnosis like you all both had, has on a patient, on ladies. And before I let you start, men can have breast cancer as well. So,
Absolutely.
keep that in mind, man. But Shelley, I'll let you start, and then uh, Veleka, you can chime into. Give me a little bit about. Well, let me back up just a little bit. I think we mentioned before we came on, or before when we came on, that Veleka is from South Carolina, and I wanted to ask you, what brought you to the Hampton Roads area?
Well, my husband is from here, And
Oh, okay.
so I went to a
From
friend's
Suffolk?
birthday party and I met him and he fooled me to Virginia. And I'm glad he did.
Oh man, us Virginia guys are kind of irresistible, I think,
You're right.
I must say,
I'm sorry. No
pop the
comment.
collar, pop the collar. But anyway, let me go back to Shelley. Shelley, I'll let you
Okay.
start talking about your experience there. You're going along and, you get this diagnosis and, I don't know if you want to tell the age you were when you got it because a diagnosis like you got could affect, especially with a young woman, it could affect her to have children and a lot of other things. And to be blunt, it could be, you know, it could be so devastating where you won't make it. It's life or death diagnosis. So tell us how it was when you first got that diagnosis and what stage in your life were you?
Okay. Thank you for having me on your podcast today. And it's funny while you
And
were talking and saying you wanted me to speak first, I began to shift because I was kind of laughing and playful. Believe it or not, that was a dark time in my life, but God brought me through. So to hear my story, you must be ready to embrace the spiritual side of it. So let's go. I was 45 years old when I was diagnosed. That was 10 years. I am a 10-year survivor, and I
oh,
am grateful for that. But yes, but when I was diagnosed, I had a promise. And to all those that are watching right now, you're hearing it from someone who's been through it, that God is a promise keeper. And what I mean by the promise is, Mr. James, I wasn't diagnosed first. I knew first. And you can take that the way you want, but spiritually, I knew. I had to go to the doctors 3 times to get a confirmation because when I did the mammogram, they didn't see anything, but I knew. And so I told them, no, there's something there because I have a promise from God. And they looked at me crazy. I said, I was told that I would have breast cancer, but it was going to be okay because I'm going to put you in good hands. And that's exactly how I knew. So they brought me in the second time and they didn't see anything. But based on this promise that I was given that was so strong in my spirit, I told them, I don't know if you have another test, but you got to do it because I feel, I didn't get too spiritual with them because people are different spaces when it comes to their spirituality. So I said, I just feel like something's wrong. You really need to do something else to find it. Meanwhile, I had already told my young sons, one was 15, one was 19, and they knew that sometimes mommy could be told things and they came to fruition. They knew that about that weirdness, if you want to call it, about me. So I told them, I told my goddaughter, who was almost like my daughter, and she began to cry. And I said, don't cry, because I said, you know how sometimes God is he favors me and he lets me know some things. I said, well, Rita is her name. I said, Rita, he said that I would have it, but not to fear, because he was going to put me in good hands. And she stopped crying. And then of course, I told my ex-husband as well. And he understood that about me. And so he accepted what I had said. Go back to the doctors. The third time, we got to be your own advocate, people. The third time they brought me in a room, they put me on a gurney and they flipped the gurney over so that I was literally strapped in, hanging upside down because I had what was called excessively dense breasts. And when they flipped me upside down, then they used like an ultrasound technique to look at me again. And they said what God had already told me. Look at there. You have 3 tumors in your right breast. No, I'm just hanging upside down like, yeah, it's about time y'all got it. And they said, well, we're going to do a biopsy of those 3 and get back with you in about a week. Meanwhile, a week passes. The doctor calls me about 5-7 days later. And he said, Miss Dance, are you sitting down? I said, yes, because I'm getting ready for work. At that time, I was doing a lot of tutoring. and at a local facility. And I said, for the first time, I became bold and I spoke what I had been given. I said, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak first. And he said, sure. I said, well, God had already told me I was going to have cancer, but I was going to be all right and he was going to put me in good hands. And it was crickets after I said that. He spoke up. Later, the doctor said, well, you're right. One of your tumors was cancerous. It is stage 1. And when can you come in so we can talk about what we need to do? And I said, okay, is that it? Because I got to go. I got a bunch of kids in a classroom waiting for me. And I know he must have been like, wow, this woman is different. And so I hung up the phone. And that was the beginning of my breast cancer situation. I have a picture this day that girl I told you about, Rita, I hired her as an assistant and she would be with me that day. And it was raining and I have an umbrella over my head and my leg kind of up in the back and I'm smiling because I knew it was a scary thing, but I knew I had a promise and she took that picture. I know it's not the story you expected, but it's the story I got to tell because 10 years he has been faithful with his promise. And to tell the truth to everyone that's listening, I needed that promise because every first cousin of mine, God rest their soul, that had breast cancer, they're gone. So can you imagine if I was told I had breast cancer and I would say, but you know, so-and-so's going, this cousin's going. I never feared. And then God also knew what I didn't know, that he didn't give me privy to this information, that the very thing I love family. And as a byproduct of cancer, I'm trying to put this so I don't seem like I'm trying to be bitter because I'm not. But as a byproduct of cancer, my ex-husband would eventually kind of back away from me and then eventually leave. So he knew, God knew I would not be able to, in my mind, be able to take, I might die. And whoa, I fought for this relationship for 21 years and now it's done. I didn't care if it wasn't good for me. I'm just dysfunctional. I just wanted my family together, which it didn't. But, you know, sometimes God will do things to remove the true cancers that are in your world. And I am done.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned 2 things that I'm glad you mentioned about your first test showed density. And a lot of women go through that and they get that letter that says, well, we didn't say anything because of the density of your breast. And a lot of people leave it at that. They say, well, okay, that's not bad news. But really, that's news to tell you need to take it a little further. And they do have tests now that can go past that density, and detect what's there, what's actually there. And the other thing you mentioned about, unfortunately, about your husband, and a lot of time people, ex-husband, a lot of time people mention or go through that with some of their spouses or, significant others and things like that. When they need them the most, they're not there. That's not always the case, but I'm glad you mentioned that because some people watching might have gone through that, and it helps to know how you made it through it, as far as that. And I would say the last time you go ahead.
I would say that's what I want to be, a beacon of hope, because I know there are a lot of women think they're going through this and wait a minute, how did that happen? But I learned, I had a cancer psychologist at the time because it was a hard time for me. I did chemotherapy for 1 year of my life. And she said, it's not unknown. It's very common, she said, for men to walk away, husbands to walk away during extreme times of sickness, physical difficulty. And I learned that. I didn't know that, because women, we tend not to do those things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, indeed. I'm a testament to that because my wife was my lifeline through the whole process, And, later on, after I came through, I found out part of that time she was sick. And then I had to return, not return the favor, but be the partner that I should have been, I should be, to be there for her like she was for me. So,
Well,
and I,
that's what it's supposed to be about. That's what the vows
right,
are
that's
all
what it's all
about.
about. I mean, that's
Sickness
part of
and
the vows that you make, sickness and health. So, but not everybody's prepared for that sickness. But uh, and I'll say one other thing, Veleka, I'm getting to you, that you mentioned about your faith and how strong your faith is, and we talked about Shelley last time, when we were talking about union and chapel, the type of school union was. Chapel was mandatory every Wednesday. And you talked about how you grew up and how religious your household was, I
yes,
guess Pentecostal or holiness, whichever way you want to call it.
whatever
And
you want to
by the
call
time you got to,
it.
yeah, by the time you got to a certain age, you needed a break from all that. But that's not a bad thing. But that seed had already been planted in you as far as your faith. So that never went away. So, it came back strong way before the diagnosis when you needed it. But, so don't feel shame if you feel like, hey, let me get away from this religious thing for a while. But, that seed is always there. I thought that was a good point too, now.
Yeah.
Malika, tell us your story and then we can have a full discussion about,
Okay.
what you're going through.
I went in for a regular breast examination, and thank goodness for insurance paying for a 3D image. And that's how I found out I had it the last time I went to get the breast images. I think it was 2023, October 2023 is when I found out. And I did not have a good experience initially. The doctor recommended that I see a general surgeon who specialized in hernias. Now, to be completely honest with you, I was just thrown off guard. I never expected anything like that. I don't have anyone in my immediate family who has breast cancer or has had any real issues with anything pertaining to that. So when she called me, I was taken aback. And she said, well, if you have any questions, give me a call. I'm here for you. I said, okay. So the next day I let the news, settle in and everything. Then I had my questions together. I called the doctors back, and she had her nurse tell me that I need to speak to the surgeon. She didn't have any time for me. So that was disheartening. So I called the doctor that she recommended, the hernia specialist, and he never returned my call. So I started praying because I didn't feel good about this at all. He's a general surgeon that specializes in hernia. If I have a hernia, I will definitely look into seeing him about it. But that was not the case. So I called my family practitioner, and she recommended a group over in Newport News. And when I tell you I was in the best hands, I had no worries. They were great. Any questions I had at any time, they were right there, Johnny on the spot, ready to answer my questions. And so once I got started with them, I felt really good about the process. So I really wasn't worried. At least I thought I wasn't. So I had surgery in January. And by the time March came around, I fell into a deep depression. We would say throughout life, oh man, I'm so depressed. Really, I was just bored. I didn't know what depression was until it hit me in March last year. And I was 2 weeks in before I realized that this is depression. This is a real bout of depression. And so I couldn't even get up before 12 o'clock. I had to make myself literally get out of bed and eat something. So once I realized that I was in a state of depression, I decided to try to push myself a little bit here and there, trying to push myself an extra mile until I could come out of it. And I did feel better after I had my second surgery, which was in May, but then I started to slip a little bit around July. And technically, I didn't come out of that funk until September. So I had my last surgery in November, and everything has been a lot better since then.
You know, you mentioned about depression, and I'm kind of glad you mentioned that too, because on one of my other podcasts, when we talk about mental health, we talked about that. You know, it's kind of recognizing that you're really in depression, and a lot of people, like you said, think they're just bored or something like that, and there's different levels of depression. So, you know, that's something that you should really pay attention to,
Absolutely.
especially you know, as an adult. You know, little kids say they're bored, you know, for certain reasons. But you know, when you get bored as an adult with everything going on in the world, you probably need to check something out.
Right.
But anyway, and you both talked about, well, you talked about your initial experiences, you know, with the breast cancer, and so often, especially with African American women, I mean, you all are misdiagnosed, or you know, some things are waved off. And so both of you talk about the importance of being your own advocate. You know,
Yes.
Shelley sort of touched on it, you know, how she had to sort of really push, you know, and take it to the next level. Where in many cases, a lot of people just say, oh well, you know, like I said about the dense thing, or if the doctor says something, well, that's the doctor. He must know what he's talking about. But you know your body, you know, so talk about how important it is to be your own advocate, and taking things to the next level for your own sanity, for one thing, to knowing the
Yeah,
truth, because it could be a life or death situation if you don't know the truth.
that's true. One other thing I want to add, this is the crazy thing about it. Come to find out that they saw these calcium deposits back in 2018. No one
Mm,
told me. 2018. And I skipped, I think maybe 1 or 2 years going for the mammogram because of the coronavirus.
mhm.
And when things opened back up, I went in for that result testing. And that's when I found out that now they're concerned about it. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me before now? Because I couldn't feel anything myself. I do my own examinations at home, but I did not know that that was there. And if it wasn't for that 3D imaging, I probably still would. They wouldn't know. So I just
Right.
thought it was pretty negligent on their part to not even tell me that, hey, we see a start of something here. We're going to keep an eye on it. We want you to come back every 6 months, yada, yada, yada. None of that. So you definitely need to be an advocate for yourself, and you need to stay prayed up. Make sure you go to the doctors on a regular basis, especially when you reach a certain age. I'm 53. I need to see the doctor every 6 months anyway for something, you know,
Mhm.
just to be safe. And so, yeah, that you have to be an advocate, and you have to stay on the good side of Jesus, the Lord, Savior Jesus Christ, because that's who kept me through all of this. It could have been way worse. I just said I was diagnosed in 2018. I could have been dead by the time, 2023
Mm.
rolled around.
Yeah, it could have turned into a very high stage
Yes.
to that point when they really
Yep.
detect it. Say, okay, well, it's
Hmm.
not much we can do except, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And and
But
Yeah.
and Shelley, I just wanted, you know, we're talking about the being an advocate, but uh, since we were talking about your faith and your religion, I want to make this point clear, and you can help too. It's so important to have that faith and stay prayed up, like you said, Veleka. But you know, you we've all known people that say, "Well, I'll just pray and leave it in the hands of God," which is fine. But it's also important that you combine that prayer with professional medical help, and
right.
like you said, take it to the next level. You know, it's important, because I run into people that stay prayed up, but they leave it there. But you know, uh, if you really know the Bible and know your faith, who made it possible for the doctors to be there in order to make those diagnoses? So you have to sort of put all that in one basket, and make sure that you stay connected, you know, with your prayer and the medical professionals, because God made those medical professionals possible for you. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to say that, because we still running into people that just leave it in the hands of prayer, which is good, but you have to take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I would just
I wanted to
Shelley, you
expand on
just
something
agree.
that Veleka said.
What's
Go
that,
ahead.
I'm
Shelley?
sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Shelley.
said I wanted to expand on something that Veleka said when she talked about the depression, because I don't want to give any onlookers the wrong idea. Like, oh wow, it was a perfect journey for her. She had a promise for God, and she tiptoed through it for a year. I did not. Veleka, I too was on the couch. I think it's too a bit of the medication. It's the diagnosis and the medication that spirals you into an extreme depression. Now, I'll be honest, because I love being transparent, because I hope it heals someone.
Yeah.
But I wrestled with depression anyway, because I lived in a difficult marriage, mentally difficult.
Yeah.
So I wrestled with depression anyway. But when cancer came, boy, it got so worse that I would lay on the couch. At this time, my son Noah was still at home. And I would lay on the couch and I'd look at the clock with the covers over my head, because I didn't want to be here. And as soon as 3 o'clock hit, I'd get up, I'd take a shower, I'd do my hair, I'd get in the kitchen, I'd start cooking. So when you walked through the door, I said, "Hey, Noah." But there were times the social workers had to call me and said, "You missed your chemo appointment today." I didn't want to go. What's the point? Because in my head, what I worked so hard for is falling apart. My son is in one room crying. The other son, I wasn't even hearing from him. He was dealing with something. The very thing that I love is now destroyed. And that was the family unit. I grew up with family units. It was important to me. And so I didn't think I wanted to be here, even with the promise. So you do have to do more than put it in God's hands. You got to just surrender. You got to seek help. I had, a psychologist. You got to do that. And sure enough, and if I may close on this one thing, I had a niece of mine call me. Danae called me several years ago, and she said, "Hi, Auntie. I think I'm struggling with depression, and I called your ex, and he said, give your auntie a call. She struggled with that all the time." And I felt so good to say, to be honest, Danae, I haven't struggled with depression since that man left, so I can't help you.
Oh,
I can't.
I'm sorry for laughing, but that was funny. But
Because I know you just put me on the carpet, but look at God. Look at God. I'm so healed. I'm so whole, and I'm so grateful for the life he gave me. I don't like the way he did it. He knows we talk about that. Could you have done it a little differently?
Yeah.
But he has his reasons.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm so much stronger.
That's why so often we question, the route he has taken us. But there's a reason. He knows why he does that. And he knows how much we can take.
We do.
So
you know what else is beautiful? I know we're here to talk about cancer, but the doctor diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis when I was 31 years old. And I used to have relapse. And in the past 10 years, I haven't had one relapse. And I still see my neurologist. The lesions are still on my brain. But he even said, "I don't think you need to take the medicine anymore. For some reason, your body is healing itself. It's reversing." He said, "What happened? What's different in your life?" So in the past 10 years. And I told him, and he said, "Well, stress people, if you're listening, if you're in a difficult situation and you're keeping it all in, you're not even fighting back, so to speak, your body will break down. Your body will die on you." I'm done again.
Indeed. Ladies, I want to bring this up too. There's a congresswoman, I think her last name is Presley, and she sports the bald head, and she's kind of made it fashionable. And you've seen models sporting the bald head for ladies. And Veleka, I saw a picture of you on your page where you beautifully sported the bald head, and that was not by choice, I imagine. But when it happens, you just have to go with the flow. And our Nubian queens are beautiful with or without hair. So But how did you take that? Because I know in the beginning, when that hair starts coming out because of the chemo or for whatever reason, that has to be something to deal with too. And I'll mention this as well. You know, you're going through this, and you kind of touched on it, Shelley, and I'll use this term: life still be life. You know, you going through this, but everybody else is still going about, and you know your life. You know, and you talked about the stage, Shelley. You had children, and that's why I asked about what stage you were in, because that's sort of makes a difference too. Because you have children, you still have, like I said, life be life, and you still have to raise
Mhm.
those children, even what you're going through, and then you have the extra thing with your ex. But getting back to the physical thing, because this caused physical changes, and you either go with the flow, you either find the different looks in natural hair, or go to the store. You just go with the ball look. Veleka, what was your thinking is that, and how did you feel when it first started happening? Because it looked like you handled it well after it all. I said, let me just take it all off.
Well, listen, to be honest with you, I don't always be honest about how I feel on the inside. When you see me, I am 9 times out of 10 laughing and joking, just having a good time. And really on the inside, I'm crying. So
Yeah, we
the
talked
hair,
about that last time. Yeah,
it didn't bother me because I know I can go buy a wig. I don't have to. I have like a million. But got me was the change of the way my body looked.
yeah.
It wasn't anything I like looking at anyway, but that definitely made it worse in my mind. And then I would say maybe November, December, I started looking at things differently. I could have a nice body in a casket. So
Mm.
I'm okay with the way I look now. I've accepted it. I've moved on. The hair wasn't a really big deal, but the appearance of my body in my mind, I didn't like it at all. But you know what? He saved me.
Mhm.
I like whatever he does now. Not that I had too many questions in the beginning, but I'm good. I accept whatever he sends my way. All I say now is, Lord, whatever you say, I'm good. That's
Yeah,
where
because a
I'm at.
lot of people would say, there was a song years ago, Not My Hair. I forget the name of the artist that sang it, and the main purpose of that, don't define me by my hair, but she
Right.
was really talking about, the natural look and things like that, how people look at you differently
Yeah,
because of the hairstyles you have. But, you know,
that's
that's the perfect song for, if your hair falls out, you just, at that moment, and most times temporary. And some people have gone through that and just kept it that way. So, but I
true.
know that had to be a psychological thing too, because, it's a little different. You see men that go through that, like I am, but you see men that can't accept that. So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's a big part of some of us men think about manhood, that to have the hair, and we'll compensate for the loss as well.
Right.
My
Yeah.
thing is, don't
Thought
make it
about it.
so obvious.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
but
interesting. I didn't think about men and how they felt about their hair, going through that
oh yeah,
situation. I never thought
yeah.
about it until just now.
Well, yeah, I had that problem in the beginning when it started receding, and I was washing more and more face, as I was, going back, and
Gotcha.
I tried to hold on to the sides, and then I looked at it, I said, this is crazy. But anyway, it's not about me. But so talk more about Shelley. As you talk about the physical changes and things like that, but those mood changes can be a part of it too. And it's important that the people around you, that's why shows like this help people that maybe haven't gone through it and unfortunately might go through it in the future, to understand what happens to the woman when the diagnosis come, physical changes, mood changes, and there might be some days where you snap at things that the people around you say, what in the world is wrong with you? But the more they understand, that these things can happen, the better the situation can be. But it can be hard on the people around you too, because a lot of times it's the people that love you, and they're the ones that catch, those days where your mood is not the best. Talk about that a little
True.
bit, did you?
So yeah, you were speaking of body images, and I'm glad you brought that out, because I was like, it's bigger than the hair. The hair is
Right.
just one thing, and it's the one thing that's most broadcast as a female cancer fighter. It is a big deal because our hair is our crown of glory. But cancer did teach me that, one, I have a beautiful, perfectly shaped head. Two, I sported, I'm into wigs, but I didn't even wear them because it wasn't that significant. And shout out, should he ever see this, and should she ever see this? My neighbor across the street sent her husband to my house, because of course I didn't have one in the house at the moment. And oh, he shaved my head so sweetly. And then he put a hot towel on it. It was like a healing situation. And my son Noah stood there, and I'm close to my nephew Darnell, and he stood there and held my hand while my tears softly fell. But it was something sweet about that moment, just to have people around me that cared about Shelley.
Yeah.
So let's talk about also, like you said, the mood thing. I wasn't me at all. I wasn't me. So if anybody heard, because I didn't talk about anything when I was going through this, or talked about my ex at the time. My focus was on me, on God, and healing. So if you heard that I was a little off during this time, I was. And I say that because I can look back and see it. And to quote my goddaughter, she said, she calls me Godmommy, I stopped coming around you because you were so irritable and you were so mean. Things that are not like me at all. She didn't know how to express it. I didn't even realize it until I heard comments from my sons that I was just not good to be around. But you try taking all those drugs they pumping into your body.
Yeah.
It changes you. It changes you. So please be patient, not just with the female or the male that you have in your life that's going through cancer. Be patient if they say things that that are not normally like them. And I feel like that was part of the reason the ex-husband walked, because it wasn't just the cancer, but I was being edgy, and Lord knows he wasn't used to that. I was always a good girl. I hate saying that, but I was. And that was part of my survival. So yeah, be patient, because they're not going to be the same. They're not going to be able to manage what the drugs is doing to them mentally. And the depression thing is real. It's real. So I still get jealous in a good way when I see like wives on social media and their husbands are right there walking.
Yeah.
You imagine going through the street, Veleka, and it's just you. See, in the military, you don't have, family because they don't live there. It was just me. And so I had convinced myself, the enemy convinced me that go ahead and die, Shelley. Nobody care. Look, they ain't here anyway.
Wow.
It was the drug and it was depression combined.
Mm-hmm.
But God had a different plan for me.
Mm-hmm.
I surprised a lot of people. I disappointed a few.
I want to piggyback on that about having people around, having good people around for support. A friend of mine, longtime friend of mine from high school, we had finally reconnected after all of these years. I think it was in 2023. She called me in August and she said that she had breast cancer. And of course, I was a little flowed and scared. So, but I'm putting on the brave. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? So what's the next step? 2 months later, I called her with the same diagnosis and said, girl, you will not believe this. So we went through it together. And I have friends in South Carolina, my family. A shout out to all of those who were there for me. And I'm telling you, it's nothing like having good people in your circle when you're going through something that's so traumatic, life-changing. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that was there for me, even when I didn't want to be bothered, because in that depression, to hear my phone ring irritated me to no end because I didn't have the energy to talk. But I did it, and it I was in a
Yeah.
bad place, but I still had people supporting me through it all. So
Yeah. And
Shelley,
that's just, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying that I feel for her that she had to deal with that all alone
Yeah.
because I know what I was going through with support.
Thank you.
It's a lot.
You're the first one to ever say that to me.
And I mean
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
I would say it's no way in the world I could have made it through that without the support I had,
Support.
and I had a lot of support from
No.
family, cousins, and things like that who were there. But to have that person, and Shelley, don't want to make you jealous, but to have that person with you just meant I don't know what I would have done. That's me personally. Because I went through that
I'm not jealous.
snapping
I'm
at people
happy.
too. Snapping at her. And I wouldn't have been surprised if she walked away. And then I started to realize, maybe I'm gonna have to sort of trust God. I'm gonna have to sort of, give people what I want, what I expect them to give me back. So
Right.
did that sort of change my attitude? I kind of fought through those depressed days and things like that, and it worked much better for me. But I'm glad both of you all mentioned that for people that are going through, because it's something that you're going to have to deal with family and those friends that are outside, or people. Some people go through the chemotherapy and still are working. So then
Yeah.
you have to deal with coworkers who are concerned and mean well, but sometimes they can get on your nerves. I remember going through heart failure and trying to work, losing weight, my clothes hanging off. And people ask me, "Are you losing weight?" In my mind, I was saying, "Don't you think I know it?" But they were just concerned, and I was snapping back at them. I'm standing here, clothes hanging off me because I used to fit my suits really well. And, for somebody to ask me, "Are you losing weight?" That was kind of crazy to me. Anyway, I want to get on this point, because it seems like it's never enough time. I want to have you all back to continue the conversation, um, you know, about other things that might have come up in your life. But I want to talk about, people, the financial part of going through something like this. It can be devastating for some if you're not prepared. And what I talk about now, people save for certain things, but you also have to factor in, what if I get sick and can't work? And good insurance is good too, but it's still some cost uh, in having, those kind of operations and things like that. So how did you all, was it were you all prepared financially for, possibly time off work, or some of the things, some of the extra costs that came along with being in the hospital? Same, the costs that weren't paid for by the insurance. Were you all prepared for that, or talk about that, and what people should do to sort of include that in their plans when they're trying to save for that big house, or or you also have to think about, suppose I have illness that might take me off work, or be financially devastating to me.
Veleka, you could go first because I was a military spouse and at the time.
Oh, okay. So she
Oh,
she was fine. Oh no,
completely
I
covered.
promise you, I was not
Yeah,
prepared. I was not
Thank
prepared.
God for.
Huh?
Go
What
ahead.
was that?
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Okay. So I own my own daycare, and
So I forgot to
I
mention
had
that. Okay.
to, I had to close it down because of the type of work that I was doing. So, in my mind, I was like, I'm not putting any more stress on my body. I don't want to, it to turn into something else or start to progress, become more aggressive than it was previously. But no, I was not prepared. And so my husband had to take on everything, household. Well, he was doing that, but my bills as well. And I did not like it because I am an independent person. Yes, I am married, but I was raised to be independent, rely solely on myself. And so when I was put in that position where I had to shut the daycare down, I didn't feel like myself anymore. I didn't feel like that independent woman. I felt like a dependent. I felt like I should just pass over my social security number and say, put me on the taxes, as a dependent. And so once, when I was in recovery, that's when I decided to go ahead and get my real estate license. And that was the best decision I ever made in my whole life, I do believe, because I love what I do and it's not taxing on the body, right? And I found that I like talking to people because I'm an introvert. But for some reason, this cancer diagnosis and the journey itself has changed me in a way I never expected. I want to live. I was existing before, and there is truly a difference between the two. So I'm at the point in life now where I have a different mindset. I see things, I can actually see colors, real colors, that is green, that is yellow. It's just like everything is mute when you're not living and just existing. But now I'm loving it. I'm loving life in a way that I haven't before. I love God in a way that I never loved him before. I've always loved him, but this is a totally different relationship. And I don't know how I went there from, did you have finances prepared for this event? No, but I'm sorry. I do go on too much about stuff like that, but I love him. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here.
Indeed.
So I did have good insurance, like I first said, so that's great. But you don't have good insurance if your ex is military and he leaves and you don't have a certain amount of time in a marriage with them. So I did eventually lose insurance. I also was working for myself. So I had nothing because that collapsed. The whole business collapsed because I was sick. So talk about being scared. I remember calling my sorority sister, Frankie Andrews. Hey, Frankie. And I said, Frankie, I think I'm going to be homeless. So that's how serious it got for me. I said, I'm going to need a place for me and my son. I know you're going through something too. Let's see if we can get together and get shelter. So this podcast could be really long if you really heard the rest of my journey. But I'm glad you mentioned that cancer changes you. I hope that you all see my last post on Facebook about doing things later. Cancer changes you. You see life better. You appreciate
I saw that, and I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
I don't waste my opportunity. Even the boyfriend that I have right now, he knows in a heartbeat if something is like a bit we're butting heads. I say, I don't do this. I don't have enough life or breath to fight over the little things. And he's learning. God bless him. He's like, well, this is a little thing. I'm not even. It's not me. Life is short, people. Why are y'all treating each other like this? Why are y'all living with restraints? I have lived my best life these last 10 years and it's getting better and better. Better and better.
I love it.
We cancer survivors, we don't play with life like y'all do. No. Yeah, I said it. We don't play with other people like y'all do. I said, you hear that Halifax me like y'all do. That's Halifax County. That's Virginia. You don't remember I said, Virginia and New York, like y'all do.
All meshed together.
Like
I kind of relate with you, cancer patients. Being a heart failure person. The last 10 years, it's been 10 years for me since my transplant. And it made me, I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. I just don't have time for that pettiness and things like that. And it shouldn't take something like what we went through to realize that in life, especially as you advance in your life, sweating the small stuff is just no time for that, because you kind of realize how short life is when you have been at a point where you were knocking on that door, knocking on death's door, possibly. And you realize that could have been the end for me then. And I thought I was just starting. Yeah, go ahead. You know,
Yep, we're
so
all living on borrowed time. I don't care if you had
all
cancer
living on
or
borrowed
a
time.
transplant or nothing at all, because Slim, we have
Mhm.
lost a lot of unionites,
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of young people in their
a lot,
40s and
lot
their
of
50s and their 60s. To me, that's young. 60 and
Yeah,
70. My parents lived to their 90s and they're dropping. So just live your best life. Um, don't sweat the small stuff. If you're in a situation where you're not talking to someone, unless it's protecting your peace, and I get that too.
right.
But
right.
I know we have sons and daughters not even talking to their parents, and hey, and I don't understand it
That's true.
because something could happen any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're not. You don't have to be perfect. We're not saying be perfect because in human nature, human behavior, certain things stir us up regardless, But I don't think you can see either one of us, you know, in a situation where we're ready to fight, fight
Nope.
anything. It's
Nope.
just not. Nothing's that important.
I don't even
Not
want to
unless
be
you're
around you.
trying to, not unless you're protecting your family, your
Yeah.
children or something like that. Now, they're
Oh
fighting
yes,
words. Yeah. You do something to my
yes,
granddaughter, my daughter. Don't know what I, but you're gonna catch something from me. But that's a whole different story.
absolutely,
That's another show.
absolutely.
Yes.
But anyway,
That's a
so
whole nother show.
whole nother
But you
show. But
know what?
that's family.
I wanted to warn the speakers that, especially male and female, outside of losing your hair all over your body, which caught me off guard. I was like, oh, those hairs go too. But my fingers
Most people
turn
think
black.
about just the head. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My fingernails, excuse me, my fingernails turn black. That's very
Mm,
common. And that hurt my feelings. I don't know if you can tell. These are natural nails. These are not fake nails. Do you see one's
mm,
broke? So for them to turn black and become brittle, that was another part of my ugliness I felt.
Yeah.
Also, Veleka and I both have had to have reconstruction surgery. I know I had a bilateral, both breasts
I did
removed.
too.
So I've
Yeah.
got scars all over the place. So screw hair when all of a sudden you've had breasts all your life, and now not only do you not have them, you have these implants and you've got scars with that, and I felt like I look ugly every time I removed my clothes. I couldn't look at myself for a year.
Right. Right.
And God even took care of that, because he can send you someone who loves you correctly, who will say, I see beauty and strength in those scars. And so either I have a different perspective on the whole scar thing that I have to deal with every day. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for that. Didn't you go through that where you were kind of shy about? Now, I'm not shy anymore because another piece of my testimony. My man and I, we decided we would not be together physically, if you don't know what I'm saying, just in case any
mm.
kids are listening, but
Right.
adults who are listening, because him and I, we have decided that we want this relationship to be blessed, because we see where it's moving. So
Yeah.
we no longer, we no longer engage. But so he has seen me. And it's funny how the right person will see beauty in your ashes.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's so true. Were you asking me a question, Shelley?
For him, because I know he's gonna watch. Thank you.
Oh, okay. And Shelley, I'm going back to you going through this struggle by yourself. I'm thinking maybe God was trying to let you know you are stronger than you think.
That's what
Because
I
it
know the
didn't
lesson
have to
now.
be that
And I
way. I
meant to
think,
tell Slim.
yeah,
I meant to tell Slim that Slim, you know
Hmm.
how you get out of a situation, you see all the reasons. One of the
Yeah.
reasons is he didn't want nobody around because I had nobody to lean on but him. And actually,
exactly.
that was part of the reason my ex didn't get mad at me, because I told him, I know you don't love me. I know this is not love, because I feel the love of God, and this is not love. But
Right.
more importantly, I realized that I don't really need you. If I can
Mm.
be brought home from a hospital, true story, and sat on a couch where I could barely move because my chest is split wide open, and you look
Mm.
at me and say, good night, Shelley. It was that moment. If he ever should see this, he don't know. Thank you. Because it was that moment that I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat up all night and asked him to take me to church the next day. But it was during that night that I realized, what are you worried about? You don't need anybody but me. You don't need him to help you. I'll help you, because I did have to nurse my son. You remember, Veleka, that surgery is, whew.
That was
And I
the
had
worst.
to do it all by myself. That's why my scars are very ugly, because I was doing the reaching and the wiping and the turning. And so I was ripping myself back open. And eventually 2 weeks later, he would, but it didn't matter because not even my sons knew. I was taking care of myself. And he put me in that place to show me that I'm taking you places, because the places I'm still, you know that, Veleka, I'm still going places. I have a way of speaking to people, meeting them in their pain, in the valley where they're at. No, I'm not called to preach, but I am called to lift.
Yeah.
And he had to take me through these things by myself so I could see you've been dependent on people you don't even need, not even them.
Wow.
I'm done. Sometimes I feel like I get passionate when I talk about my story. I'm happy I can talk. I used to be scared to tell my truth because I didn't want nobody to feel bad about people in my life. I didn't want, it was part of my training growing up. You don't tell, you smile.
Right.
Yeah, people out here, they need me. I don't care who gets mad at me. I'm telling the truth.
And that's all that matters.
I have to say this when I have guests on, if they have a Facebook page or if they're on LinkedIn or whatever, when I look up and try to get a feel, even after, sometimes it's conversations with the people, and sometimes I try to get a feel of who that person is. And, and Shelley, you remember last time I pulled something that you had put on, I see little things that people post on Facebook, and it sort of gives me an idea of the person. And Veleka, I saw something you put up there. You have mastered surviving. It's time. It's time to live. It's time to live now. And whether it's a quote by you or you picked it from somebody else, I think it's so important to put those little things, because people can really say, "Oh, wow," it tells something about you. The strength that you have, and that you're going past certain situations, even though you still deal with some every day. You mastered it, but but you still are living. And Shelley, I want you, before we end, I want you to read that later stuff that you put up there, because I wrote all that down, later. So before we end, we're in with that, you reading that to the. I wanted to ask
I
you,
had
ladies.
it open.
Okay, so we'll pull it back up so you can. I want to ask you, you hear the term cancer survivors use, I'm cancer free. And, or, I was in a situation, not a situation, in a meeting with a doctor one time, a cancer doctor. And to him, he didn't like the term of people saying I'm cancer free, because you're really kind of in remission. And one of the fears that can be psychologically damaging to cancer survivors is the fear of reoccurrence, because you see it happening all the time. Even with me, they couldn't guarantee me longevity, even with the heart transplant. But what encouraged me was meeting people that were 20 and 30 years out, sometimes, and then, but at the same time, I saw people that had the same operation that didn't make it a week or didn't make it a month, even after having a successful transplant operation, because there was other things going on with them. How do you all feel about the term, people using the term cancer free? I mean, is that something that maybe it's psychologically helping to people that are in remission, or is everybody in remission? Because I think anybody that has it, there's a possibility of it returning, and that has to be something that's probably in the back of your mind too. How do you all feel about that saying?
Like
Well,
a cloud
right. I was like,
for me.
I think it's a great thing to say cancer free. And if they call it remission and it happens to come back in some other form, okay. But right now, I'm cancer free. And I made sure, now it was only in one breast, but I asked to have both of my breasts removed because I know it's a real possibility that it can form in the other breast. So I asked, he didn't want to do it, but I asked, can you guarantee me I won't get develop cancer in my other breast? And he said no. I said, but I can take both of them off. He did not want to do it, but he did. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have to worry about developing cancer in this other breast, and then I'm still existing and trying to survive rather than living. So by taking both off, I'm able to live and have here that I am cancer free until somebody tells me differently.
Right. Because I thought it was strange for that cancer doctor to say that, because at the moment you are cancer free.
Right.
And still it comes up again if it does. And then you're a cancer patient. But you're cancer free and a survivor, because you survived it, but you're cancer free. And I just wanted to get you all's take on that, because it's I was just kind of thrown off by hearing someone in his position saying that. And most of the time you see people ring the bell, cancer free. And I think that's psychological. That's also psychologically helps the patient to be able to say I'm cancer free. And to me, I think, my brother had stomach cancer and he said he's cancer free. He can live his life a little bit better by having that thought in his mind.
Yeah, good. Shelley?
Veleka, I caught you looking at me.
Huh?
That's one of the things I love about you. I saw you glancing at me because you saw my energy shift. That's probably you were glancing at me, right? I wrestle with that cancer-free stuff. I wrestle with even with the promise in which I was. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because of social media, every day you see people having cancer back and then they're dying. I have older cousins, not first cousins, like second, third cousins, and I needed them to survive. So yeah, it broke my heart when they were 15 years in and then they left me.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm sorry. It hangs over like a dark cloud because I'm always constantly seeing people not make it. So you can pray for me that I get in a headset where I don't worry about it can come back, because that's a real thing for me. But on a positive note, I have learned and accepted that if it is in his plan that this thing returns, and I really don't, I think he used it to alter my life and he doesn't need it anymore, cancer. But if it should return, cancer taught me not to fear death. Life is difficult. Life is not all of that. So at the same time, I'm like, I had to go back in because this left breast was hurting and they had to do some tests. And I remember crying, but not because of if it comes back. I was crying because I don't want to do this again. It was hard. I didn't want to do it again. But should that be in my books, trust me, I'm going to use it like I did last time to encourage people, because they watch you when you're diagnosed with cancer. They watch you on. And I used it. I use it to talk about the glory of God and the promise that was given. Having said that, I pray that it never has to, because it's a difficult battle. That's all.
I never want to go through it again.
I'm going to be like you, Veleka.
What?
Well,
you were like, no, it don't, no.
No, honestly, I felt safe after I had
be like her on that.
Different people feel different ways about that. So I appreciate, and I'm glad I had two people that, sort of saw it a little differently. So I think that helps whoever was watching, because they might feel the same way. They might go one way or the other. And I have to go here because I'm glad you mentioned, Veleka, your double mastectomy. What do you call it? Well, your double removal.
Oh, mastectomy.
Mastectomy. Okay. I just couldn't get it out. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I used to see this lady on Facebook that would pose. She had a double mastectomy and she would pose. Beautiful lady, and she wanted to show her beauty went beyond, having the breast. Yeah. And she did it for the same reason you did. You had on one side said, I'm going to do the other side just in case. And,
Okay.
just like we talked about men going bald or something like that, that's kind of superficial, when it comes down to it, because some people or some women define themselves, or people define a woman because of their breasts. But when it comes down to what you had to go through, sometimes that's something you just have to face. And then you realize, just like you're not your hair, the same thing goes for that. So I think that was important that you mentioned that, and it doesn't take away from in any way of your womanhood,
Right.
and your attractiveness from men, or in any woman that feel like I'm not going to be attracted, to men again
I
without.
miss my breath. I'm not gonna lie to you. I miss mine.
And I've heard that too. I've heard that too. I miss too. But I mean, it's a part of you,
It was.
But some people might make the choice not to do that because of their feelings. I'm going to lose my womanhood, but
They do.
they lose their life behind it. So
Yeah.
that's the point.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to make. I know it's probably
I did
something.
the right choice. I was they wanted to do a lumpectomy
Yes.
on my right breast. That's just the removal of where the tumor was, sir.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give it a chance. Explain what that is. Mhm.
Right. And I refused it. And not only did I remove one breast, I removed the other because it runs rampant in my family. Like I said,
Right.
my first cousins that had it, they're not here. So
Yeah.
I made that choice. So it wasn't something I really wanted to do because, my breasts were a part of me, a part of my womanhood. I liked the way I looked in bed with my then husband. I went through a lot of changes when I was sexually active. I'd have to keep my shirt on. I was petty.
Yeah, I mean, we made it more a part. It's a part of what a woman is, and then we made it more sexual. Because the true purpose of it, is for what it is. Is for taking care of the children that you might bear. But I really appreciate you all sharing that, because a lot of people might not share that part of it. And I think it's so important, for people to know, once you go through that, it's a decision that really has to be made. And your partners or spouses have to be okay with that too, because it's not you, it's not you, and it's, the person that they love or profess to love goes beyond all of that. Or it should, so even though you might miss certain things, I miss my hair. I miss that afro I had at Union. I had one of those big ones, during the 70s, that was important to have an afro. So I miss that. If I would still have it now if I still had the hair, but
I hear you.
But
I hear you, but my man is bald and I love it.
Yeah. I was defining my blackness back then. Black power, with the big word. Anyway, yeah, power to the people. I'm the 70s guy. I'm the
We are
70s
too, but
guy.
we are still children.
Oh my goodness.
Shelley, that reminds me too when I said to you the other night, sell a million. That used to be a thing relatives used to tell each other, and you told me that was outdated. And I said, "Oh my goodness, it has been a long time since y'all don't say that to each other anymore."
I've never heard
that
it
was
before.
our thing.
Hey,
You had an open house.
Sell a million.
Sell a million. Yeah. That was the cry.
And we will together. Because we will.
As we wind down, Shelley, I want you to read that later post that you put up there. I think it's a good way to end. And even if it sparks a little more conversation, I have time, but please read that.
I will. And I would love to, if you want to have us back. Unfortunately, I can't stay longer. But I still believe that your platform could be a blessing of reaching people that were once where I once was, in a very dark and lonely place.
Yeah, and this can't be a one-time thing. We have to continue to talk. And and bring other
I
people
hope
into the
so.
fold, because sometimes you bring people in and it helps them
Yeah.
to talk about it. You know, some people have never talked about it, and it really helps them. And every situation is a little bit different, even though it's the same.
This is my first time
But
speaking openly about it. So,
oh, okay. Well, I'm
yeah,
so glad you did
when
that
I was
because
hiding it, the people that I talked to, they knew about it, but to make an announcement or anything like that, I didn't. So this is actually my first time talking about it on
Yes.
social
Thank
media.
you, Mr.
okay,
Slim,
that's gonna be on
for giving
YouTube
us.
forever.
Yeah,
That's
whatever
true.
you
So
need.
And
how, how, how do you feel talking about it? I mean,
I
how,
feel
you know,
good.
and once you got started, yeah.
Yeah, I was nervous, still a little nervous, but
Mhm.
I tell you, this has been a great experience for me. And it's interesting that Shelley mentioned it because I've been talking about doing a podcast for like the last 3 months, and then all of a sudden it fell in my lap, and I'm like, "Thank you, God.
Yeah,
This is good.
everything happens for a reason.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you,
only
Mr.
do it,
Slim.
only do it.
Yes,
Yeah, and
it did.
still pursue that podcast thing. Still pursue that, you know. But even when you do that, still come back on this show
Most
whenever.
definitely. You the one
Absolutely.
that reached out and got things
Absolutely.
started.
Yeah.
I'll always be ready when you need me. I'm here.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and I saw that you had an open house yesterday.
I did.
So
It was very
uh,
successful.
I fondly remember those open houses. Sometime I didn't want to go, but when I first started, I was doing open houses for veteran agents because I didn't have anything, and
Gotcha.
I didn't want to go. But I picked up, you know, I might not have sold that house for that veteran, but I picked up clients that way, you know,
Right.
or customers, whichever, you know, either way. So
Yeah.
it's, I hope you
Yeah.
sell me. No.
I want more than a
Well, a
million.
million.
The Lord says you have not because you ask not. I'm asking for it all.
Okay, do that thing, girl. Do that
I
thing.
want a million plus.
Yeah. All right, Shelley, go ahead.
Okay, I first wanted to thank you too for the opportunity because there's a lot I said today that nobody has ever heard me say in public because I was scared. I just didn't want to upset anybody and I was a little afraid, but God has charged me to speak up, even about the embarrassing things that you lived a
Yeah.
life of depression and you were scared to speak your piece that because you didn't want things to happen in your household, you wanted to keep it. I walked on eggshells, and I'm saying, I'm speaking up, and it's healing. Thank you for being a part of my healing.
Yeah,
So
and
this thing on
I
Facebook that
have
I
to say
put,
this.
it said,
Okay. No, I have to say this though. Thanks for saying that because people that watch, um, you know, it's needed, especially in this area, for African American women. The cancer rate is really high, just like heart disease is really high, and we need to listen. And as far as mental health, it's always been a stigma in our communities where people did not want to, uh, you know, follow up if they're depressed or if they're having issues. So it's always important to have people talking about it and giving people that comfort to deal with some of these things. And sometimes they can get comfort in other people talking about issues that they have a stigma about. So thanks again. All right, I'll let you go now. Go ahead. I know you all have things to do. How did this tell?
what I wrote on Facebook said, stop leaving it for later. Later may be too late. Later, the unexpected can happen. Later can lead to never. Later, they may be gone. Later, it may get worse. Later, the opportunity can pass. Later, you'll be older. Later, you'll be slower. Later, you'll regret what you should have done. Later, you'll regret your unspoken words. Later, may be too late.
Well, it's funny how that can be related to what you ladies have been through in real estate.
Mhm. That's
You
true.
know, it can go for both
It's
of
for
the
everything.
things.
Yeah.
for everything,
I was thinking
everything in
about
life.
relationships too. When I
Yeah.
wrote it,
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of relationships, whether you're a mother or father or sister or brother or cousin. I don't care what you are. Stop treating each other like tomorrow is promised. You foolish
Yeah.
Right.
people.
I'll
Right.
do it tomorrow. And
Yeah.
we all know people who are waiting for tomorrow and didn't make it to the
That's
next
true.
day.
Mhm.
All right. Again, ladies, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. And if you have
We
any last
appreciate
words,
you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing so much, because every time you share, I share a little bit too, things that I've been through.
I
So,
see.
Thank you.
I feel you. I
I
feel you.
appreciate it.
Everything you've been through. All right. Thanks, ladies. Is any last words that you might like to say? Or
Thank
Happy
we
you
save it
Memorial
for
so
next
Day.
time?
much. Yeah.
Happy Memorial Day. Yes,
Happy
yes, indeed.
Memorial Day.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All
Take
right.
care. Great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I'm gonna say it again. Sell a million. I don't care. I'm old school.
Okay.
I'm an OG realtor.
Okay.
I'm an OG realtor.
We're gonna do that and more.
How you know we're not already doing that?
Shelley is.